Holistic Veterinary Medicine Workshop. I'm Samantha Kemna, the Central New York educator with NOFA New York, and I'll be helping make sure everything goes smoothly today. We also have Francesca Vanderwert from our dairy certification team on for technical support. If you have specific tech questions, please feel free to send them directly to her in the chat. Just a reminder, please remain muted with your video off during the presentation. We have enabled closed captioning. These captions are auto-generated and not perfect, but if you would like to see the captions, there should be a notification at the top of your screen enabling you to do that. This workshop is being recorded and will be shared on the conference website and mobile app shortly after the end of the presentation. Feel free to introduce yourself or ask questions using the chat function. Questions can be held until the end of the presentation, but if you have questions as you're going on or anything is unclear, please enter that in the chat and I can let Cynthia know that there are questions or that she needs to explain something in more detail. NOFA New York's annual winter conference would not be possible without the support of all of our generous sponsors. NOFA New York would like to specifically thank our app sponsors, Hudson Valley Farm Hub and Honey Dog Farm. To learn more about these organizations and their work, please visit them in the marketplace or online. And now I'd like to pass it off to Dr. Cynthia Lankinow of Holistic Center for Veterinary Care, who can take it from here.
Hi, well, this is really quite an honor to speak for you folks, and I just love cows, and this is just really an important topic. So everyone kind of always wonders what holistic means. Is it some woo-woo? No, what holistic means is you do whatever works for you. There's a place for everything, and it has its place. But one of the big differences looking at animals holistically is you're looking at the whole animal. So nutrition, emotional state, environment of the barn, emotional state of the owner, it's all very important. And we need holistic medicine drastically in our dairy industry because we have to reduce drugs and antibiotics, not only for the antibacterial resistance to bacteria, but also for expense. A lot of holistic therapies you can easily do on your own. You can learn how to do it on your own. Some you need hours and decades of training, but there's some basic things that everyone can do. So it makes your animals more healthy, and therefore your conventional vet bills are much less, which will decrease the owner stress because it's effective and economical. Those are the big keynotes that always have to happen when you're in practice. And of course, as organic farmers, you know that we have to have an alternative to antibiotics. I mean, you folks have done the huge step in not using antibiotics. It's a crisis. These bacteria are going to be resistant, and then there is no option. And granted, in holistic medicine, there's sometimes hot bugs that the herbs can't work fast enough, that you do have to treat an animal with antibiotics. She's out of the organic herd, but she's alive. And yes, that does happen, but there's so many wonderful alternatives that you can use if you have them available. And if your veterinarians are trained to use this, so a big push for you to push your regular vet that they have to learn at least the basics of what they can do before pulling out the drugs. And of course, they have to be effective. They have to work, and they have to be economical. So let's look at the well-known modalities. So the most commonly known is acupuncture. It's been used over 4,000 years, and that Iceman that they found frozen in the Alps, he had evidence that he'd had acupuncture, and that was over 10,000 years ago. So I think all of us, you have that sore and you rub it and you can feel it tingling like in your distal foot when you're rubbing your shoulder. Well, that's one of the acupuncture pathways. Our body is designed to have this check and balance homeostasis effect that you can feel sore spots and you want to rub them or massage them, and then the pain goes away. Unfortunately, with conventional pain relief drugs, that warning symptom is turned off. So when you listen to your body, or if you watch your cows and they're rubbing one spot on their shoulder, there might be something going on there. Other thing, then we look at herbal medicine, and every traditional culture has herbal history. So the Chinese herbal medicine, because it's one of the few and Ayurvedic medicine that has been basically unchanged throughout its development, except for a couple of little blips. Chinese herbal medicine is very well established. Disadvantage is milk withholding, quality control hasn't been established. Well, the milk withholding hasn't been established in some Chinese herbs. Unless you're getting your herbal medicines through a reliable import company, quality can be an issue. It isn't if you're using through reliable import, but if you're just buying it on Amazon, you are going to get in trouble. Chiropractic or spinal manipulation is an ancient philosophy. It was established by the Palmers in the 1800s in the US, but all native cultures have some kind of spinal manipulation or massage therapy. Western herbal medicine, which I think every dairy farmer is using intuitively. Cows go out on pasture and crave certain weeds. And we are incredibly lucky in the West, in the United States, in that herbal medicine in Europe had been suppressed by the church. They wanted control. And just before everyone started coming to the US, Culpeper was radical, and he translated all of the herbal books up until that time in Europe, since the Dark Ages, were in Latin. And the common person couldn't read Latin. And he was a heretic, and he translated into common English. This book is still in print. And so all the people coming over, immigrating to the US, brought their little Culpeper herbal book, and with native influence, developed two incredible herbal systems, the eclectics and the physiomedical system. Wonderful, wonderful herbal systems. Then we have homeopathy, which great thing with homeopathy, absolutely no worry about drug or meat withholding or milk or meat withholding. It takes a lot of study. A lot of acute remedies are easy to learn, but deep remedies sometimes are difficult. But luckily with cows, usually we're looking at more acute situations. And then we're just overwhelmed today with everything coming out. Reiki is an older energetic healing technique that anyone can be trained how to do. But now we have all these electromagnetic, fancy, incredibly expensive things like beamer blankets, electromagnetic things, magnets, carbon dioxide therapy, ozone therapy. The list goes on and on. I think as I get older, I like doing what I can do with my hands and with some acupuncture needles, and a lot of the fancy electromagnetic devices. I don't know, they're just way too expensive for my taste. So what we're going to start with is easy, simple acupuncture. So I'm not wanting people, I'm repeating, I'm not wanting you to run around with needles and pith your cows with needles, because you can use your finger and massage on these points. But this system has been developed. There's 12 paired and 2 unpaired meridians in the body that they're like our electrical flow. And by massaging and manipulating these points, you have a direct effect on the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. So what you're doing is kicking the cow into a homeostasis. So let's say she's got something inflamed and her body isn't reacting, like she's got a hot quarter. You can massage some of these acupuncture points, and what you're doing is turning on her immune system to make her body recognize what's going on. It's incredible. It's incredible. Now, cows are incredibly evolved, so hopefully you can see my pointer. Cows, because of their rumen, have 2 extra lines, this one and this one, because they are so evolved over the simple pattern of like a person. Incredibly rich acupuncture points to use that affect their GI, which is one of the big things that is so important with cows. I mean, I remember when I first got out of vet school, they had just taken Nux vomica out of those Carmelax, those big pink pills, and Carmelax pills used to work wonderfully because they had this herb called Nux vomica in it, which is great at little doses. At big doses, it's kind of toxic. But the cows responded well. And so when I was first in practice, I remember this one cow, we ended up doing a ruminotomy on her, and she had like 25 Carmelax pills completely undigested in her rumen, just sitting there. So a lot of the pharmaceuticals, drugs, they just don't get that rumen working well. And massaging these points, you have a really good chance on inciting that first rumen contraction, getting her rumen working again. So we'll go into that. Okay, so again, I'm not telling you to prick them with needles, because that can be a problem with a cow that has a lot of manure on places and you're picking needles, you're going to get abscesses. You don't want to do that. So you can use finger pressure, you can rub in essential oils, you can use a tuning fork, which is a wonderful way to vibrate these points. And middle C is sort of the idiot-proof tuning fork. So you can just have a tuning fork in your hip pocket. You can, I was going to have my tuning fork with me, but you hit it and you just put the end point right on the point, or the end of the tuning fork right on the animal. Moxibustion, so that's this big cigar looking thing here, is a wonderful way to heat up the area, but it's a fire hazard. So what I do is I put these steel needles when I'm doing acupuncture, and I cut off a bleb of this moxa, and I put the moxa right on the needle and light it on fire. So one horse I was doing this on, she with great skill flicked her tail, took the bleb of moxa, flung it artfully into a nearby pile of straw, and within seconds the straw was on fire. You can't let their tails do it. So really the only safe place in the barn to do it is if you have a milking stall. Can't be near any bedding at all. Problem with that is then cows don't like to go in the milking parlor because of the smell of smoke. One good thing now is it has an odor, an essence of cannabis. And now that cannabis is more legalized in New York State, I used to have people look at me really oddly when I'd burn it, thinking I was smoking something illicit. Actually, it's a great smell. I love the smell. Okay, so acupuncture itself to learn takes decades and decades and decades to master. But we have emergency points that everybody needs to know. They're simple, they're effective. The first one is it's an emergency resuscitation point. And on a cow, well, I couldn't get a front side view of a cow with a point on it. If you go between the bottom of the tip of the nostril, so if you're looking down here, see there's her nostril there, there's her nostril there, the bottom part, right dead center in the middle. Where this is, if you ever have a cow that's down with milk fever, and she's one of those rare ones that has that bizarre reaction against calcium and has a cardiac arrest, take your fingernail and bird peck that point as hard as you can, and it will bring them back. You got a chance to bring them back with that point. It's amazing. Or a calf that's born, some of them, you know, that they'll try to take a couple of breaths, but their heart isn't beating at all. I mean, you're massaging their chest, obviously, having them upside down, getting any fluid you can out, but same thing, bird peck that point right here. So you peck, 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 peck. It makes them do that. Get that first breath going. It's incredible. And you can do it on a person too. I had a woman have, she was in the office and she spiked up her blood pressure and I thought she was dead. And I did that as we're calling 911 and she survived. It was quite impressive. So very important point to know. Nursing stimulation, you know, those calves that were kind of hung up too long and they're born really dumb and they just don't get it. They just can't figure out how to nurse. They have hardly no suck reflux. So the next slide has the point, but it's right behind the hard part of the dental pad. while you're stimulating her butt. So that point's called governing vessel 1. But we all know how when you scritch their butt, how they love, they'll just automatically butt their head and start nursing. Also, you can use that point when they're septic or depressed. If they're not nursing because they're having a real high fever, actually, that is one time I want you to use a needle and you prick the tip of the ear and the tip of the tail and let that one drop of blood come out. That's if they're really, really septic with a high fever. That'll add in with massaging the top of the roof of the mouth. So those are the points. You're looking at the top of her jaw, just behind the dental pad, right there. That's where you're trying to stimulate them to nurse. Also great for bloated cows. It'll help them belch. Wonderful point. And when you're using a speculum for a cow that's bloated, and you let her chew on the speculum, you're stimulating that point also. So let them chew on some of those kind of, where they just have a hole further down, that you tie it on their mouth and you put the tube down is nice and it works. But having a full speculum so that they're massaging those points when you're getting gas out of their rumen is really important, really critical. It'll save a life. If it just saves one life, it's well invested knowledge. So as I'm talking about, you can use essential oil. So these are some big ones. I love a lot of frankincense, and I love the pines, and I love the lavenders. There's so many essential oils, but really any essential oil is going to stimulate these points. These are the big ones that are known for pain, to help pain. So when we're talking about down cows, big ones to think of. Now, you're not using the direct essential oils. Even in a cow, it'll burn them. It'll burn their hide. So you take 1 to 3 oils. Usually you want to blend. And when you really get into it, there's different notes, high notes, middle notes, low notes. The high notes diffuse faster. The low notes hang longer. It's just a system if you're not going to be able to massage these points every couple hours. So there'll be some effect lasting from one day to the next. But you take 5 to 10 drops of the essential oil and you put in a 1 ounce bottle of, I usually use olive oil, but you can use almond oil. A lighter oil sometimes works a little better in the colder weather. And then you put a couple of drops on the point. So it's easier when you're massaging these acupuncture points, I think, when you have a little bit of lubrication instead of just your fingertip. So I know this is an equine cow, but this point here, the stomach 36, it's on the hind leg below the stifle, on that muscle on the front part. Everyone's sitting there on your leg, sitting around, you get really achy anyway. So feel the tip of your knee go down to your tibial crest and then go off to the side. And if you're massaging that area, I'm sure you'll hit a point that you say, ow, that's a little sore. Or maybe it's just me because this cold and up and down, I get really stagnant. So this point is called the 3 mile point, and it gives you the energy to walk 3 more miles. And all of our cows, I would say, have problems caused by deficiency. So you can have an issue from an excess, you can have a problem from a deficiency. And this point builds up you if you're deficient. And I would say all metabolic problems in cows, they're deficient. The susceptibility to mastitis is from a deficiency. Almost all calf problems are from a deficiency. There's that underlying weakness that allows them to get sick. So this point, if you have any calf just not feeling right, if you have any cow, and some cows really don't like their legs massaged, so it's easy in calves to get them used to that area being handled. Or you can use a brush, especially get the kids out there, making sure that they're not going to get kicked by a cow that doesn't like her legs brushed. Massage that area, brush that area for any animal that isn't feeling well. So this is, just some points. I don't expect you to learn all of this. Yes, you'll be quizzed on it at the end of this talk. No, just kidding. But it harmonizes the stomach. Well, translate that into rumen, because this is from a human acupuncture book. Fortifies the spleen. The spleen refers to your immune system and your ability to digest food, and it refers to your muscle function. So you can prevent a DA if you have really good, what the Chinese call spleen qi. Your qi is your energy, your ATP, your get up and go. So it gives you the get up and go to go. So Ma Dang Yang said, it's one of the most vital acupuncture points in any cold injury to the stomach or any parasitic disease. So calves that have coccidia, great point to massage. Declared that all diseases can be treated by this disease with this point. So it is one of the single most important acupuncture points to improve your digestion, keep your energy going, keep your ATP up, give you that strength to walk 3 more miles. So again, the moxibustion, you got to be really careful. It feels great, but you just have to make sure you don't burn your barn down. You can use capsicum liniment in exchange, but so I like scuba diving, and last summer my low back was sore, so I slathered it with some capsicum liniment, put on my wetsuit, and I'm thinking when we're going out, it's a little bit of a boat ride, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I mean, my back was really getting hot. And then I thought, I just have to get in the water. And as soon as I got in the water does not cool off capsicum. And I think the whole dive, I had steam coming out of my wetsuit. It was incredible. So you have to really be careful if you're using capsicum liniment. It will warm up the point, but just start with a dab. Sometimes it feels really good to use larger volumes, but you have to make sure you're not going to burn that cow, because boy, it will. Tramiel is another really good ointment that you can massage on. There's others. There's R30 cream, but this uses homeopathics also that you can massage in if you want to use a liniment, or just regular Bengay you can massage in these points if you're not going to use essential oils. Okay, so I want you to know some rumen points, because rumen points are really important for, and this stuff can do stuff that conventional medicine can't do. I mean, back when I was first in practice, I worked up in the Boonville area, and I used to use coffee and dark labeled beer, anything to try to get that rumen to work. And oh, there's so many better herbs that you can use, although good coffee really does help that rumen go. But anyway, so going to massage the rumen, there's 2 really important points. So hopefully you can see my pointer, the upper diagnostic point for the rumen and the lower. So bladder 43 right here. So that's in the intercostal space number 10. So cows have 13 ribs. So when you count up their ribs, it's really easy. You just go 12, 11, 10. And then you go up to the angle. This is located where the trapezius muscle is. You massage that. So if it's a rumen problem, you're going to be working more on the left side. And then you go down to the bottom of rib 12, so 13, 12, and there's spleen 6. And those 2 points are the points you're going to want to use to massage, brush, finger pressure to get that rumen working. So it's called P-Shu, influential point for the rumen, and the intercostal space 10, the groove on the lateral, the bottom edge of the trapezius muscle, where, and the insertion on the left side, so below the muscles there. Good for any GI problem, any rumen problem. Great point to use. And then spleen 16, which is at the bottom of rib 12 at the costochondral arch. For bloat, for motility, to get that rumen working. If she's just fresh and she's not really milk fever, maybe a little hypocalcemic, but just her energy's down, the rumen's not working, just massaging those points, brushing those points, get that rumen functioning better. It's also a diagnostic point for hardware, although that grunt test pushing up behind her sternum is so diagnostic anyways, but they'll also be sore there if they have hardware that's sore. So this bladder meridian is the pathway that goes right down the back, and the most important, I think, pathway for you guys to know because it has a lot of diagnostic points. So as you're going down, so this is just off like a 3-finger off the dorsal aspect of her vertebrae, her thoracic vertebrae. Bladder 20 also refers to the stomach, and that's right by the last thoracic rib. Intercostal space 12. So you go up. I'm trying to find where I put my there it is. You go up one space, and that's bladder 20. That also refers to the abomasum, refers to the for the immune system support. 19 refers to gallbladder issues. 18 refers to liver issues. 17 refers to diaphragmatic pain. So a lot of cows that had maybe a little bit of a umbilical abscess in the liver going up to the lung, that point will be really sore. Diaphragmatic pain is huge for these cows because they never breathe really. They can't take a good deep breath. So they're in the heat stress in our now warmer summers. It's a big problem. The next point up, bladder 16, is just a big energy point. 15 refers to the heart. 14 refers to the pericardium. So if they have traumatic pericarditis, that point will be sore. And then 11 or 13, whoops, that's 13 here. That refers to the lung. So as you're just putting your finger, or usually I'll use like a nail or a needle cap, just running down those points. If they go, ow, that hurts, you know you have a problem regarding that issue somewheres, that area, that organ. Usually you know anyway, you can figure it out. But then if you're massaging that point until the pain goes away, or the other thing that you can do, you can massage there. And let's say she's just exhausted, her liver's exhausted, has no energy. You can massage that bladder 18 area until that you can feel some life come back, that it isn't a big cold spot anymore. So just massaging these points, you can get an awful lot of effect. So what you're doing, if you want to be scientific, you're stimulating your sympathetic nervous system to tell her liver it's not working properly, and get your act together, and come on, let's get some better neurologic flow to the liver. Let's get better blood supply to the liver. It's a win-win situation. So going straight down her back, now, you're not wanting to hurt her, the dorsal aspect of her spine, but in the area between her vertebrae, really, really important point. So these going down here, so this is her rib, heads up here, tails down there. If you're massaging these points, that also will stimulate what we call the cranial celiac ganglion, which is responsible for rumen function. So going all the way down, let me see, I don't have my glasses on. So governing vessel 8, going all the way down to between the 4th lumbar vertebrae, you can stimulate her rumen function. And this is the point that starts that first dorsal contraction of her rumen. So if you have a rumen that isn't moving at all, nothing's working, massaging in between the top parts of her vertebrae. So if this is the top parts of her vertebrae, you're massaging in between. You're not putting pressure directly on her bone. You're going in between. And that'll initiate rumination. Very important point. Okay, so I guess I'm blathering on a lot about this. So we already showed you the governing vessel points. Very exhausted. So these are for, and these are these beautiful cows that we see in our organic dairies that can't survive in these big, monstrous corporate farms longer than a lactation or two. The old favorite cows, massaging this low back on her, the same way us older people get sore low backs. It really makes them want to walk more, so they're grazing better. They're not so resistant to show signs of heat because their back isn't as sore. And we'll see later on that all those points in her lower lumbosacral area, her low back, have great influence on the sympathetic nervous stimulation to her uterus. So to keep these cows cycling and functioning, massaging, rubbing essential oils in that lumbosacral area, so between these lower lumbar areas where it joins her sacrum, and then in the either side of the sacral vertebrae, putting finger pressure in all of those acupuncture points there. So really important for older animals. So of course I have to show slides. So this is Dolly, and local guy that used to milk cows and couldn't make it. Now he just has a couple of beef cows. So the water, he was gone, the water had frozen, and the cows didn't have water for 2 days. And their hay that year was really, really coarse. And she was kind of bloated, not eating. So it was sort of a mild impaction. It wasn't horrible. But so here we have that's our top point, the 43 point, that point, and then the spleen 16 way, oops, where's my pointer? Way down here. I think you guys can, oh, there it is. And then these are just those upper lines reinforcing it. Those were the only 4 acupuncture points we did on her. And that's just, see, there's my acupuncture needle. They're really fine needles, but you can use you'd be using your finger. You'd be rubbing essential oils. I mean, look how little that little needle is. It isn't any horrible mutilation that I'm doing to her. It's a little fine needle. And we did also pump her rumen with some electrolytes and some herbal marshmallow, which is just a big demulcent. It's just slippery, makes everything slippery. She was fine. So simple, easy. And I think she probably would have eaten the marshmallow, but I was there and I just love pumping their rumen with really nice warm water with some nice electrolytes, just something to get everything nice and lubed up and warm. Okay, so this is on the left side, but obviously I'm trying to tell you this on the right. So if you have omasal issues, and actually the biggest problem I've had that in our area, there's a lot of apple orchards, and every year somebody figures he's just going to feed the apple pips to the cows to save some money. And every year there's 1 or 2 cows that get an omasal impaction from that. And actually herbally, honey is the best thing to help lube that up, better than anything. But this 4303 point, which is at the 10th intercostal space at the level of the shoulder. So if you just count back from the last rib, so the last rib is 13, so that's our 12th intercostal space, our 11th, and then our 10th intercostal space is where this 4303 is. Now I have to give credit, and all of these charts are from a wonderful Austrian veterinarian, Oswald Kothbauer, who unfortunately just passed on, but he was just a wizard with cows. And he'd spend hours watching their lick pattern when they were out in the pasture, watching what one of these points they were stimulating on their own, which was giving him an idea what was going on with the cow. But that's a really good point to both diagnostically for omasal impactions. That's where I find it most useful. Okay, so the abomasum is more the simple stomach and referred to in people, but for some reason in cows, it seems this bladder 18, which refers also to the liver, and bladder 19 are better diagnostic points for abomasal issues. If they're not displaced, but they're starting to, they'll be very, very sore. And massaging those points, getting some stimulation to the abomasum easily can prevent a DA. Abomasal ulcers, if they're painful, yeah, they'll be very painful there too. But also, so these are the same points you'd use for the liver: bladder 18, bladder 19, bladder 20. And then liver 14 If there really is a big liver issue, so this is at the 8th intercostal space, so going up a little bit from the omasal issue, which would make sense because the liver is more forward than the omasum. That's the alarm point for the liver. So if that point's sore on the cow, you've got a big liver problem. Think if liver flukes, if you can't see it, or does she have a fatty liver problem? Is she ketotic? So big, and then a big point to stimulate, because then you're stimulating her body to balance her own liver without using any drug or anything. So other essential oils, I just thought, really, there are so many essential oils. This isn't a class on that, but any of these. Chamomile's a nice one to have on hand, especially for a nervous ketotic cow, because it will help calm the mind. I like ledum a lot, but this is more horses with Lyme disease. Cows luckily don't suffer from it as much, although I have seen it in goats. Juniper is a nice opening. I like that a lot. Nutmeg is really good for digestive issues. So those would be the bigger ones I do. Rosemary is really good for brain too. So a nervous ketotic cow, you might want to think of chamomile and rosemary. Okay, so some other points that I thought were really good for you to know is stomach 18. So this is kind of down from that ninth or 8th intercostal space, a little bit down more, but this you can use for the front quarter mastitis, but also for coughs. So it's a great point to know. Great point to know. And same thing. So you're massaging that point. You're relieving, if you want to think of it more from a Western, you're relieving the lymphatic congestion in the udder so that it's going to be able to get better faster. In the hind quarter, though, you're going up to these points up in the sacrum that we were saying that you use for these old arthritic girls. And this kidney 10 is right where the udder attaches on the hind leg, on the uppermost attachment of the udder. So you're going to massage those points. And again, it just is common sense. You're relieving the lymphatic congestion so that the udder can get better faster and get over the mastitis. Oregano oil with a carrier massaging directly on the udder is wonderful. On the acupuncture points again, so for pain, for relaxation of the mental stress, antibacterial, time is antibacterial. Massaging those oils directly on the udder and on all the acupuncture points. So these are some other points just to consider. And I, when you have a bad calving and everything's going to heck, to prick bladder 67, which is right above, you're massaging around her hind foot. If it's a bad calving, why not? But this bladder 31, this is again, all those points in the sacrum, if she's had a bad calving and had a cervical or, her cervix was torn, she's not getting a nice cervical tightness. So she's got a chronic active uterine infection. She just is always a little pussy. Wonderful thing to help heal that cervix. Just massaging those points really can help them heal better. So all of these points are right. So here's her sacrum. You're looking down at her back. Here's her tail. There's her pin bones right in there. So that's the area that you're going to massage for cervical trauma, post-calving, for hind quarter mastitis. Wonderful points. So if you have a little girl that isn't dilated very well, you just don't really want to have to do a cesarean. But this is just common sense. So what you're going to do is be massaging this area, lubing it up. Well, that's just common sense. But what you're doing is acupressure. You're massaging that whole area up in her sacrum. This is gentle and light. You're not being mean. You're relaxing the tissue so she can calve. So same thing. You're going to massage all these areas, which you're doing anyways. You're relaxing things, stretching things. So you see, you're already acupuncturist. The one big thing that cows have is when they're down, and they're it's bad because if they get bruised muscles and they're down, their fascia, that connective tissue over the muscle, isn't giving it all. And so what happens is any swelling in the muscle can't swell out because the fascia puts too much pressure, and they get muscle necrosis, and then you're in trouble because then she's not going to get back up again. So massaging, we'll go over some points, but one Chinese herb, Corydalis, this is one of the best herbs to give her to help that pain, get the bruising out of that muscle, because if the muscle gets too bruised, she's not going to get back up again. A lot of massage, so that bladder 31, the point that we already showed that you're using, if she has a cervical lesion up in her sacrum, all the way down to this gallbladder 34 is a very important point. Massaging at the top of her hamstrings, down at where the hamstrings attached to her Achilles tendon. All of those points are really important to massage. So this whole area, if she's down, so this is where the sacrum attaches to the tail head, all around there. That's where you're going to be massaging, all the way up to the top part, right behind where her sacrum is attaching to the spine. So you guys hopefully get these notes, but these are the big areas you want to massage. So that gallbladder 34 is right off what we call the head of the fibula. You know, they've got the two big bones going up, the tibia, and then there's this little tiny bone, the fibula, that connect. There's her femur, there's her hock. And just behind that head of the fibula is a very important point to connect up here, to keep the nerve function going and to help the nerve keep stimulating that stagnant blood to move out of the muscle. There's our good old stomach 36. Of course, you're going to use that. And this point down here, stomach 44 and 41, right by the front part of her hock, massaging that. They call this the foundation of the mountain. This point going up to large intestine 10 by her elbow, actually. And then there's another point up there, large intestine 11, that help her get up. And actually, I like, instead of spleen 6, spleen 5, which is on the inside of the hock. So you're thinking, she's a down cow. Why should I be bothering with her hock? But massaging or rubbing, brushing on the outside of her hock, the inside of her hock, and around her elbow. Really important points to help her have that strength to stand back up again. So bladder, top of the hamstring up here, going all the way down to where the muscle attaches to the tendon, massaging that area, stimulating it, finger pressure, really important points to get her back up again. Okay, so we're going to go through these fast because I want to show you other points you've got on your notes. Play with them, palpate them, stimulate them. And again, brushes, best thing for the kids. Give them the brush, tell them where to brush the cow. So they're just brushing and stimulating those acupuncture points. Okay, Chinese herbs. You need guidance from a Chinese practitioner. You need to get your herbs from a reliable import company. We don't have milk and meat withholding times on a lot of them, but Yunnan Biao for hemorrhage is the best thing. So if you dehorn a calf and you don't have spider webs to throw in there and you couldn't pull the artery well enough, Yunnan Biao powdering on. If you have a cow that cut her milk vein, you know, you've clamped it with a clothespin, but you can throw Yunnan Biao on it. This will save you from hemorrhage, and it's amazing. Incredible. It's also great to use as an intrauterine lavage because it's an antiseptic. Great herb. So that you should have on hand. Everyone should have it on hand. And 2 Chinese herbs to have. These are what we call patent Chinese herbs. In China, if you walk into any pharmacy, you can buy them off the shelf. But to have yin chow, an acute flu, and gan ma ling, these are 2 wonderful acute flu. Have a little draft, the calves, or you bring another cow in, and oh my God, we're going to have shipping fever through the herd. Get the cows on this. Western herbal medicine. Every farmer should, you're using it anyways. Your cows are using it when they go out to pasture. Again, they have to be organically sourced, but they're out in pasture anyways. Rule of thumb, we've got some great herbal companies, use an herbal company that have run by herbalists. Rule of thumb, if you're just buying something, 3 to 4 times human dose for an adult cow. If it's an acute situation, 8 times. Young calves, I like using tinctures because they haven't got the microflora in their rumen to break down the herbs. Ground herbs for everyone else. Milk and meat withholding, that's an issue. You're an organic farm. My rule of thumb is if it's any herb that has strong antibacterial properties, hold milk for at least 3 days. So that would be the berberines, Oregon grapefruit, stuff like that. If it's out in pasture, it's out in pasture. I mean, I'm sorry, it's what they can eat out there. It's safe. Here's some herbal companies that are great: Frontier, Mountain Rose, Zach Woods, Healing Spirits, Herb Farm, and they used to milk cows there. They're a great group of people. The Reasons, Matthias and Andrea, Pacific Botanicals, all of those are good companies, very reliable companies. So I wanted you to see, so this is Helena, and she is a dry heifer. The mom just was lost because she had chronic ketosis that was treated conventionally, and she lost her mom. And the owner realized that Helena was fat. She's 6 weeks due to freshen, and she's going to get ketosis, and she has a fatty liver. I mean, she was incredibly fat. So I wanted to, we did the typical things. We assumed that she had a fatty liver. She was in a lush pasture. She was being fed grain. So we right away decreased that, did the mineral shift, decreased her calcium, took her off the grain. We had her on an exercise program that she was really attached to one of her steers, and we put them in a different pasture. So Helena would walk up and down the lane in the pasture to bemoan that she wasn't with her friend. So she was exercising, but we had to get digestive aids to get rid of all that fat. So I started her on this huge Chinese formula, and the owner said, no, I'm not going to pay that kind of money, and I want something simple. So we did. But one thing in that formula I wanted you to know about is orange peel. Chinese call it chin pea, but if you have organic oranges and you dry them and grind them up, this is one of the best herbs to harmonize the spleen and stomach. So you're going to keep that rumen working well. You're going to prevent her from getting a DA. You're going to keep that rumen working. So we're going to go through that. It's a wonderful, wonderful herb. So the big thing we used on this girl was milk thistle, good old milk thistle. Now, I have to say, in New York, it isn't an issue because the herb can't overwinter, but in the Northwest, milk thistle is rated as a noxious weed. But anyway, it's amazing because I've seen calves go out around here that it will grow in the summer. It won't overwinter, but they'll eat around these huge spikes that the milk thistle has, and they'll eat the leaves. They love it. Anyway, it's a wonderful plant. Hepatoprotective, it's an alternative, meaning it helps the body get rid of garbage and be at a higher state of health. Anti-diabetic, you don't really have to worry about that with cows, but the big thing is the cholesterol stuff. A lot of milk thistle. And then we threw in fenugreek, turmeric, burdock root, gymnasium, and reishi, equal parts, a tablespoon twice a day. So she was only on the Chinese herb for a week. We already Fenugreek is a nutritive tonic. I think we went over that. We'll go over those. And then 1 week from calving, look at her. Isn't she beautiful? I mean, she's beautiful. She's a gorgeous girl. Calved well, no ketosis. The owner just kept her on milk thistle after calving. Beautiful. So milk thistle is one herb that you guys all need to know about and use. Typically, we use the seed. Oh, yep, it's a noxious weed in the Northwest. So you can grind the seeds if you want to, although I'm always worried about some of the oils in the seed getting rancid. So if you're grinding them, grind them just before you feed them. Tons of incredible phytochemicals in this plant. So this is a herd that I had. They had an aflatoxin contaminated feed. They bought their feed. They had gotten too big. They weren't able to grow their own feed. That was what the cows had. And they'd lost 5 cows to hepatic necrosis, and the herd average plummeted. It was horrible. And so we started a mixture of milk thistle, burdock, and yarrow, 30 grams per cow per day, which was very affordable. No more deaths. The herd average rebounded up to 54. Amazing. We just had to protect, and they had to be on that mix for the whole time they had this contaminated feed. Anyway, so ketosis in cows. There's scientific research. So this is, a lot of people like seeing that. I love it when all this modern research just validifies traditional knowledge that yes, milk thistle can treat ketotic cows. It can treat fatty liver. Wow, that's huge. Can treat fatty liver. Another thing, another study in the treatment of fatty liver. So this is more for small animals or people, but it's a pancreatic restorative. Everyone thinks of milk thistle as a liver protective. It's an even better pancreatic restorative. Pancreatic protection. We don't think about that much in cows. If they get pancreatitis, or well, I'm sure they do, but not as big as their other digestive issues. And milk thistle helps the cow produce more milk. How about that? The mean fat content in the milk was significantly higher. So it improves the yield and it improves the fat content. It also helps, if the owners of the cows have diabetes, great herb to take. So just a big thing with Helena, fat heifer, beautiful before she freshened. So the other herbs that we used in there, fenugreek basically was the main herb I wanted to use to replace the wailing song. Fenugreek is simple. It's on your spice rack. Wonderful bitter digestive tonic. So it decreases cholesterol, strengthens the liver, or strengthens the digestion, strengthens the ability of the animal to absorb her food. And a lot of research on how fenugreek helps. And it helps the microbiome, in cows. I mean, that's it. They live by our supporting their rumen microbiome, and fenugreek helps that. Turmeric is incredible, and it has been shown to decrease the incidence of DAs. Very affordable, very easy to blend in, either if you're feeding a total mixed ration or just dabbing it on. They love the taste of it. It protects the liver. It helps produce better bile flow, so they're able to absorb their fatty acids that their rumen bugs make. Wonderful herb. You can use it for inflammatory skin conditions. You're using the rhizome of it, moves chi, which makes you move your energy. It's interesting because I always kind of wonder if this herb, for those herds that do have lymphoma in the herd, if it might have because it has a really strong anti-cancer effect, if it might help some of those herds. Wonderful, wonderful herb. Heals gastric mucosa, so protective for abomasal ulcers. Prevents the eye damage, protects the beta cells, protects the liver. carminative, so it helps if they're really tending to want to get a DA because it's moving that gas out. And if you have a cow that did have to go on antibiotics, although, you're organic, so you don't, but if you did, it helps protect if you have small intestinal bowel overgrowth of bad bugs. And then kind of wondering about Johne's disease. Would it have an effect on that? It's a thought. It's a thought. Burdock root, simple, cheap, easy, is high in fructooligosaccharides, high in inulin. So it's great to feed the guts bugs. Gets rid of the lymphatic congestion. So again, if you have a herd that you have lymphoma, it's a potential issue, or it's a potential thing to think of. So we're going to go through these quick. Reishi mushroom cows. Generally with reishi, most of the mushrooms, they have to be processed because even cows have a hard time with the chitin, that hard shell. It helps, well, for pancreatitis, yep. But this is also one that I think really could help prevent DAs. Tonifies chi. Really good for those nervous ketotic cows because it helps treat anxiety. So, and also can help fatty livers. So win-win. Just make sure they're organic and they're great. Genemia, you wouldn't have to use this. I just threw it in the formula because this Helena was so fat. We use this a lot for diabetics and people, horses that have metabolic syndrome. Decreases fatty acids accumulation in the circulation, but Helena was so fat that I thought we better throw that in. So it was a simple, easy to use formula and tasty. She loved it. We fed it as a ground herb, but you could use it as a tincture. The herbivores love herbs, and she just did great. So I threw in some extra stuff. This is an expectant mother's tea. This is an old formula. But, for your favorite cow, she's due to freshen and she's had some past calving problems and you just want to make sure everything goes well. Here's a little formula. The raspberry leaf just makes that uterine, it's called the uterine proprietor. It gets it like ready. So it's toned up. It's ready to get that calf out. Nettles is our blood tonic. So it just helps give the cow the support that she needs, the strength that she needs. The oat straw actually helps calm her. The ginger just gets everything nice and toasty and ready to give birth. And the peppermint just it expands the herbs out through her system. Chaste tree now we're going to switch over to a little bit of reproductive stuff. Chaste tree berry is incredible for ovarian cysts, although I usually use it with this. That's actually a cactus, and then I feed it in a tincture form, treating hormonal infertility. So those overworked, overproducing girls that just don't have enough energy to start cycling back. A wonderful herb. It's also for if you've had cows that have tended to have first trimester loss because their CLs are insufficient. They're just not, they don't have enough energy. Their endocrine system is just off and they need that little stability to help keep that calf safe. Ginger tea for exhausted uteruses. I had one cow once, she had quadruplets. I'm sorry, she was just amazing. But usually we see this in triplets with sheep and goats, twins and cows sometimes if they're exhausted and they get that first calf out and they show absolutely no interest in finishing up. Cinnamon tea bark. And this was just, I figured this out even before I knew anything about herbs. She was a prolapse and it was so cold, her uterus was frozen on the alleyway. And she was so cold, I just asked the owner to get her some cinnamon tea that we pumped in her after we got the uterus back in, and her uterus did great. So cinnamon bark tea, if you ever have a cold uterus that's bleeding. Okay, we got to talk quick about homeopathics, and then we'll finish up with some questions. So homeopathics are wonderful because there's absolutely no milk or meat withholding. It's an energy. So it's always safe in an organic certified herd. It takes a really intellectual thinking to figure out long prescriptions, but acute medicine, oh, it's like easy. So you have any soft tissue trauma, you use homeopathic arnica. You have any nerve pain, so a cow stepped on a nail, you're just so afraid she's going to get a horrible abscess, you give her hypericum, and it's amazing how well she will be fine. Belladonna for anything hot and inflamed. Aconite, if you have an animal in the corner of the barn where there's a draft and she's starting to show signs of early upper respiratory diseases, it's great. You can use disease, we call them nosodes for homeopathic, so like leptospirosis. I've got one herd that they cannot tolerate the vaccine. It's horrible. And we use the leptonosode, and during the fall, when they're going to be exposed more to lepto, the owner gives just little pillules. So it's a couple of dollars a week. And he hasn't had any miscarriages due to lepto. Baptisia is another really good remedy to have on hand. It's for those septic acute gangrenous. So this is a remedy to think of for septic metritis, septic mastitis. Very effective. 4 cycles. So we already talked about herbally giving chast tree. You can use it homeopathically also, but there's a couple. So true unicorn root actually was completely over harvested. It's an endangered herb, so you'd never use it herbally, but homeopathically, it's very effective for when she's infertile because she's exhausted. It's a great homeopathic to try to kick her body, so you're thinking, oh, there's no energy in it. What do you mean? So let me explain that better. So homeopathy is you're taking the energy of the remedy. So it's diluted past the point of Avogadro's number. So those of you that remember your physics, that's past the point of any physicalness. So you're giving her an energy form. But we know from physics that 2 like energies can't exist in the same place at the same time. So when you give the homeopathic remedy, you're displacing the energy of the disease. You're displacing her exhaustion. You're displacing the septic mastitis. And then giving her body that rebound effect to heal it so that the energy of the disease can't come back. It's incredible. When you have the right remedy, it really is magical. And then false unicorn root is another endangered herb. Use it at the energetic dose, which means homeopathically. And one of our early wonderful eclectic physicians, which is, anyway, I can't divert to that, stated that sterility from uterine atony is the most effective remedy known. So those are the cows that every time you do a pregnancy check, the uterus is just dead, just kind of flabby, a little mucusy, just not doing anything. Best remedy for that. Homeopathics for scours. So this gets a little more confusing because you can look at all the remedies that are indicated, and if you give the not indicated remedy, it does nothing. That's the only disadvantage of homeopathy. If you don't give the right remedy, nothing will ever hurt them, but it won't do anything. So a little bit of white milk scours, calcarb or nat carb. So all of these, so these are minerals, yep. If you're collapsed, profuse diarrhea, abdomen swelled, I mean, you really look like you're dying, arsenicum album. Camphor is when you're really cold and you have black diarrhea, really, really cold. Carb veg is, again, you're collapsed, you're weak. Well, how would you know the difference between arsenicum and carb veg? They really look a little similar, except typically with arsenicum, you just have that diarrhea just kind of like oozing out all the time. And usually arsenicums will only, they're thirsty and the calves will want to drink, but only a little bit. You know, they'll take a couple of sucks on the pail and then they're done. China, they're just weak, more yellow diarrhea. Colchicum, they're more bloated with a lot of gas. And if they get up, they just act like they're achy all over. Then you can use what we call an E. coli no-sode if you've had a lot of calves, or let's say you had a calf and you know you didn't dip her navel fast enough and you know she's probably going to get something. You can give her this E. coli no-sode, which is telling her body, this is going to be in your system and it's going to be bad. And it stimulates her Peyer's patches in her intestines to be on the lookout for it. Mercurius, usually they're a lot of saliva. They're just drooling all the time. You think of Mercurius. Podophyllum is when the diarrhea doesn't seem painful at all. It just kind of dribbles out all the way to having a rectal prolapse. Veratrum album is like an arsenicum album, except you're even worse. I mean, they really look like they're dead when you go out to the barn. Okay, so I have 10 more minutes. Chinese massage is the same thing you're going to be doing with a brush, but this is another therapeutic. So when you're massaging, when you give the kids their brush and you're telling them to pat the cow, rub the cow, move the fascia, you're doing Chinese Tuina. So you're already doing a 4,000 old technique as you're thinking, I'm going to stimulate her rumen, I'm going to, stimulate her digestion. So it's a system of pulling, pushing fascia. Phew. So there's our dairy cow. And of course, her fascia is a lot tighter than that horse. That's why I love for kids to use brushes and curry combs when you're massaging these points, because the cows like them, and actually a lot easier on your hand because their hide can be so tight. And then there's so many new devices today. You can use stone medicine, you can use beamer blankets, they're expensive. There's all these new electromagnetic things. Reiki, everybody can be trained in. You just need to go to a Reiki master and they make it so you can be the conduit for electromagnetic energy to heal your animals. And do we have any questions?
So I know in the beginning I had said if anyone wanted to comment or had questions to put it in the chat, but nobody has. So if you have specific questions now, feel free to turn on your video and unmute yourself to go ahead and ask. Cindy, I've learned so much. This has been a fantastic presentation.
Oh, good. I'm so glad because, there's so much you guys can do, especially, your dairy herd. You've got the numbers that you can spend individual time with them. And there's so much you can do.
We've done that, the maxibustion, I think is how you had pronounced it, on a cow years ago. And it was amazing for her. It was our first show cow we ever did it on when she got arthritis, and she loved it.
Yeah, it feels great. I was banned from 2 barns that I couldn't do it because they were afraid that they were both, one was a dairy where, they also made ice cream and stuff. And they were so afraid that they think that the helpers were smoking pot because it smells just like pot. So I couldn't use it there. And then another horse barn for the same reason. But now that pot's legal in New York State, hey, no problem. But it feels so good and it just warms you up from stem to stern. It's really a great thing. But you do have to watch out for fire. It is a real risk.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like Jess Reed has a question. Any recommendations for supportive care for arthritis?
Yes. So arthritis, if you have to differentiate whether it's hot arthritis from joint ill, or is it a cold old animal from just being old? So that's the first question. If he wanted to unmute himself, if it's a hot arthritis, and I hate to say this because this is also a restricted or a endangered herb, is devil's claw. But you can use devil's claw and you can use a little bit of gravel root. That works really good. There's a Chinese herb formula that's called kick all the crap out of the body. That's how it's translated. And it's sold under the name of Supple Joint by Con Herbs, which is a reliable supplier. And that's the best if they have a bad hot joint ill. I've had it work in many cases, especially if you're worried about osteomyelitis. So that's one group. If it's the old arthritic cows, they're blood moving herbs that you need in Chinese medicine. So things like Corydalis is one of my favorites. Frankincense and myrrh can help move that. But you want to help lubricate the joints also. So good old goji berries that are in every health food store is a nice tonic to the tendons and ligaments. And actually milk thistle can help nourish the ligaments if the ligaments are stiff. So you almost have like a rheumatoid arthritis. So those would be the big things that I'd go for. Teasel root is a great herb and it's a weed everywhere. Pretty hard to find it though where it's kind of organic, so you have to watch your sourcing of it because it likes to grow in waste areas, or you can buy it from KPC, or herbalists and alchemists have an organic source teasel root. And the other wonderful herb for any tendon ligament problem is Solomon seal. And Solomon seal is just the most beautiful herb. Again, it's a little bit limited in commerce. And if you grow your own Solomon seal, you have to be careful because the herb loves to grow in a herd. So you can't over harvest it. You can only take make sure you always have like 10 plants there. And then you can try to replant. So you're using the herb. So you have to harvest the whole root and then replant that top corn part of the root, and it might regrow so that you can be more sustainable. But Solomon seal is one of my most favorite herbs for old tendon ligament injuries. It just makes everything work better. Does that answer his question?
And so when you're talking about, like for this instance, older arthritic cows and the remedies that you'd be using, I wrote down some of the key ones here that you mentioned. Would you're saying to like rub them on the location then, or?
So herbally. So I was talking about those to give them internally herbally. Yeah.
Okay.
But you can make liniments out of then I'd use Bengay. You could use Bengay. You can make your own liniment out of homeopathic arnica. That works really well. That Tramiel that I had shown up for massaging, to massage on the joints, is great. Tramiel, there's another one called R30 cream, but great homeopathic massaging that you can put on topically. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions from anyone?
I have a quick question about using Reiki, which I've used on my cows for years. And I did have a cautionary tale from another Reiki practitioner once that talked about giving Reiki to a cow that was bred already, so that sometimes what the cow can handle will be too much for the calf.
I haven't seen that, but what I have seen, I was at one farm call and the chicken had been born, with his insides inside out. The thing was going to die, and the poor kid ran up and gave me this chick, and I could feel the Reiki energy from my hand, and the chick very peacefully died, which is what had to happen. And I gave him the energy to die. And I felt the poor kid just was screaming because I killed the chick, and I'm like, oh my God, but it's what the chick needed. So I could see, the only thing I can think of from your cautionary thing was if the calf wasn't really viable, and what was going to happen was the calf was going to die or reabsorb or whatever. But that would be the only thing I think, because it just helps everything. And then if the animal doesn't want it, I've had some that refuse it, and then it hurts. You have to get your hands off. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Right, I've had animals that they'll accept it for a while, and then they've had enough, and they just take a step away.
Yeah.
And you know that they're just saying, okay, that's fine, I'm done now.
Yeah, they're so smart about it. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Oh, Cynthia, I have a quick question too. I know Sam, when we were talking earlier, you have some books that have you authored some books?
No, I haven't authored any books. I've
Oh,
given talks. And it depends on your, oh, you should see my library. Oh my gosh, stacks and stacks of books. For Western herbs, actually, I think for someone starting out, Matthew Wood's books are the best, because he incorporates in all of the ancient, from Dioscores up through Culpeper, through all of our native knowledge, I mean, they're incredible books, and he goes through each herb and how it's working, from traditional knowledge plus from what scientific research talks about. For Chinese herbs, again, especially being certified organic, we really need to have that straightened out, because certain suppliers of Chinese herbs will guarantee that they're organic and will have done analysis. But to keep NAFCO certification is tough. I had one farmer, actually the picture of the calves in the beginning, he was certified organic, and the headaches he went through, and we used on those calves had an upper respiratory thing, and we used thyme, horehound, mullein, and eucalyptus, and got him through a respiratory thing. And oh my goodness, the paperwork we had to go through so his certification wasn't challenged. I don't know. So I'm putting a plug in for you guys to figure out the certifications for these farms that are using herbs that are certified organic, so they don't feel at risk of losing their certification. I got off task there.
that's okay. I know we do have a lot of producers that use different herbs, and we chat with them on that. It's wonderful.
Oh, that's right. I was talking about the Chinese herbs, and I get the worry about Chinese herbs because there is a contamination problem. I'm sorry, I'm going to walk my computer over. My dog's saying she's going to pee in the house unless I let her out. So what I would say is the Chinese herbs you have to be a little careful about. But if you're using a good, reliable import company that's checking the quality, you should keep your organics things. Oh, books. So Chinese herbal books, you can go crazy on. I think the Western herbs are the ones to start with because they're easily available. They're right in the pasture. Yeah.
Would you recommend a source to find a chart for the acupressure points? While you were talking, my son and I were sitting here looking at this, counting over the ribs and trying to draw a little picture, and it's like, I'm never going to remember this.
Well, you should, I think I sent in my PowerPoint to you guys.
Oh, okay.
So you should be able to get it. The best book is an acupuncture book by Oswald Kothbauer. And he's passed on. I don't know if the book is still in print, but sometimes you can find it on eBay. Unless you speak German, the English translation, but that is the best book for bovine acupuncture. I don't think there's anything as good, because he's the only one that identified the 2 extra lines that ruminants have that I think are so important, especially for bloated cows or for to prevent DAs, it's really important to do those extra bladder lines. The Chi Institute in Redding, Florida has other bovine charts, but they basically have just taken the points from people and transposed it on the cow, which I think is not, because the cows are more evolved than us. I mean, their rumen is beyond anything a person could ever do. So they have extra points. Yeah. So any other questions?
All right. So since we are kind of at the end of our time, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I'm just going to post a link to a survey, which if you could take the time to fill out, just kind of gives us some good feedback about how the conference is going. So if you can take a little time to fill that out. Cindy, thank you again. This was a wonderful presentation.
Oh, good. Thank you
And
so much.
Very
Thank
informative.
you.
I'm sure I'll be going back and watching it again.
Good. Well, thank you so much for having me, and you guys keep up the good work. We need organic farms.
Yes,
That we
do.
sure do. Thank you. That was absolutely amazing.
Oh, you're so welcome. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.